So welcome to the third in the Untapped Treasure series. This is art glass of all kinds, how to find it, how to know it, and how to sell it. And this is, oops, and look at that, I need to fix my PowerPoint, don't I? Anyway, this is the third in the series. We've done EAPG and American Brilliant Glass. Murano and Venetian glass was last time, despite what you see up top there. We are doing art glass of all kinds today. Next time we're going to do depression glass, and that is going to include carnival glass. So we're doing depression and carnival glass together. We're going to do crystal and other clear glass. So there's some art glass makers that I left out today because they will actually fall into this webinar. Makers such as Lalique and Steuben and some of those. Then we're going to jump into fine art, paintings and prints, other sculptures and other fine art types of things, antiques, and collectibles that bring big money. And after preparing today, I am thinking that I'm going to be maybe even adding on some bonus webinars at the end as well. So today we are going to cover where to find it, how to identify it, how to list it, how to price it, how to photograph it, how to package and ship it, which is always a biggie. So where to find it? This is always the big thing. So it's going to depend upon where you shop, of course. And some of you are saying that you're having a little trouble hearing me. Let me see if I can do anything to turn that up. I don't think I can, guys. I think it is what it is. Oops. I went backwards here. Oh my goodness. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so most of you are saying loud and clear, so if you can't hear it, it could be an issue of your computer and your speakers. Majority are saying they can hear just fine. Okay, so where to find it? Most likely. So this is probably going to be something that you're going to find in estate sales. Very highly likely to find this in estate sales because this is a collector item. Auctions. Again, estate sales, auctions, those two places really get their things from sort of the same source. So it would make sense that you would find this stuff in auctions. Estate sales would be my first line, though, because that's coming directly from an estate that's being clearanced. A lot of times that sort of thing ends up at auctions after, you know, kind of as the leftover. So may not get the nicest pieces by going to auction, but still a really good place to find art glass. Flea markets and private sales. Watch places such as Craigslist even if somebody is selling off their grandmother's antique glass or, you know, art glass collection, that sort of thing. All right? Where you're less likely to find it, while it's not impossible, these are just not, if you're going out specifically to find art glass, this is not going to be where you want to go. Yard sales, garage sales, yard sales, and thrift stores. Yeah, can you run across it? Can you find it in those places? Of course, we can find this stuff just about anywhere, but it's not going to be your most likely place to find the really good pieces. You're more likely to find the cheaper pieces there. So how to identify it? So this is a Google image search that I pulled up for art glass. So you guys tell me, what is the first thing that strikes you about what all of these pictures have in common? Exactly. Color, 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 color. I know you guys are all saying color, 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 color. Yeah. So art glass is first and foremost very, very colorful. Very colorful. Eye appeal, another good way to put it. Bright colors. Yep, okay. So yes, so art glass is basically defined as, this comes from dictionary.com, it is any of the several varieties of glass that use combinations of colors, special effects, of opaqueness and transparency, etc., to create an aesthetic effect. It's basically things that are made for decorating. It is not everyday using glass. This is stuff that was made to decorate, whether it be for windows, lamps, really large sort of things, sinks even. I mean, I'm killing for an art glass sink one of these days. So there are functional uses, but for the most part, these are decorative items, such as vases, bowls, that sort of thing. It has been around since 1100 AD, or at least we can trace it back to this far because Theophilus wrote his instructions for craftsmen. So if you guys don't know who Theophilus was, he was a guy that is said to be responsible for writing a couple chapters in this little book called the Bible. So there are historical documents going back as far as 1100 AD talking about the craftsmanship of glass. The methods for both making stained glass and blown glass have really not changed that much over the course of the last millennium. It is a handed down tradition that just keeps going generation after generation. And through the years, what's happened is these designers are kind of all, and it's a predominantly male place to be. There are some women crafters, but for the most part, these are guys, and we all know how competitive guys are. Sorry, guys, it's kind of just a fact. So they keep wanting to outdo each other, come up with better and prettier and more extravagant, and that's kind of been the evolution of some of these art glass pieces. They kind of all want to outdo one another. And then there's different techniques and styles, and we're going to discuss those in greater detail in just a moment. But think about the history of stained glass. So we think of this glass going back, many centuries in like the old churches and the windows and such, and that's art glass. I mean, so art glass goes back a very, very, very long time. So how to identify it? So the basics. Like we said, it's colorful and decorative, and there are just many, many, many different forms of objects and things. There's paperweights, platters, wine stoppers, boxes, ornaments, jewelry beads. Little jewelry beads are still considered art glass. Vases, sculptures, bowls, and so much more. And we talked about Murano art glass last time. Murano is a form of art glass, but we kind of broke that off and talked about that separately. So still within the same realm. So when you're looking at a glass piece, of course you want to look for a label and or a signature. Some pieces have both, some pieces have only one. And most importantly is look for that quality and eye appeal. And you're going to learn that quality and eye appeal, of course, is going to be a bit subjective. But when you're looking at the quality, make sure that you are handling a lot of glass. That includes picking up cheap glass. I mean, if you're at the dollar store and they've got some glass, pick it up and feel it. Even though you know it's cheap, pick it up and feel it. When you're someplace where there's a really, really good glass, pick it up and feel it, because then you're going to learn. It is a touching thing. It has a different feel to it. The really good glass, and we went through this when we did my recent day with Danny. I was putting glass in everybody's hands. I mean, really good glass, when you put it in your hands, you just know. It's hard to describe. And that was coming from, the appsters that were along that were picking up the glass and going, oh, yeah. It has a quality to it and a workmanship to it that you can see and feel. So get your hands on a lot of pieces, a lot of pieces. Examine the pontil. The pontil can give you a lot of information about how the piece was made and how much time was spent in the little details, such as perhaps polishing the pontil. So there we go, color again. I mean, that is the first thing that stands out with art glass. It's just very, very vivid and colorful and catches the eye. So here's an example of a very typical signature that you're going to see on the bottom or around the base of a piece. They're etched in, so they're going to have a little bit of a frosted look, and they won't always be distinguishable. So that's not a deal breaker. You can learn the better company signatures, and I'm going to show you some examples as we go through. But even just having a signature and being able to say that a piece is signed, there's many, many collectors out there shopping on eBay who know that the third-party sellers who get these pieces don't necessarily know what they have, but they have learned the styles, and so they will search for signed art glass, and perhaps there's a specific color or style of item, and they can look that up and find the makers of those things, and then they know. So always be sure and include a picture close-up of that signature, even if you can't make it out, because your buyers can quite possibly make it out. And then, of course, for those who don't know, the pontil is what happens after the piece is formed, and it's formed, and we're going to go a little bit more into this. It's blown glass, starts out as a glob, and they blow it, and right here is where it's connected. Now, this is the opening of the vase that they're making here. So they have to disconnect this from the rod that they're working with. And when that happens, it creates a rough point. Some makers will polish that off, some won't, but knowing the differences and how those pontils are done can be really big clues into the quality of your piece. So techniques. So we're going to talk about a few of these today, and this is by no means all-inclusive. Stained glass, blown glass, kiln-formed glass, and Charlene asked a question about fused glass, and kiln-formed kind of fits into this fused as well. Sandblasting, which is a decorating technique, copper foil technique. We're going to talk about factory art glass because there can be a misconception there. I want to clear that up. Flashed art glass and cut to clear art glass. And we're going to talk a little bit about applied decorations. All right, stained glass. So, of course, we're going to talk about this first because this is the first and foremost oldest technique of glass known. And we know it as these big, spectacular glass windows. I mean, and you can just see that this is going to be worth thousands of dollars just by looking at it. But there's pieces that aren't necessarily, you know, these big masterpieces, but still sell for quite a bit of money, and they're made in every character, form, and function that there is. So stained glass is just really, really popular still, and many things, modern things, are made from stained glass, and definitely pick them up. They sell really well. Lamps are a very popular thing. This is a little toucan nightlight. It's all made of stained glass. And of course, you have your Tiffany style lamps that are still extremely popular. Oops, sorry guys. Let me go back 1 second here. So of course, one of the most famous stained glass designers was Louis Comfort Tiffany. That is what he became known for, was his stained glass lamps. And the colors, and I actually found this fascinating. See, I learned when I put these together as well. So the colors that you guys might find interesting come from adding metallic salts to the glass when the actual glass is being manufactured. This is before it's made into any type of a shape. I found this really fascinating. So to make green, they use iron oxide into the glass. To make blue, they use cobalt, which makes sense. You guys hear cobalt blue being talked about a lot. If you add copper oxide to the cobalt, it makes turquoise. And if you add nickel, then it makes violet or even black glass. I thought that was really interesting. I know, it is chemistry, yeah. Red is made with gold in small concentrations. It's about 0.001% for that rich, deep ruby coloring, and even lower concentrations make a cranberry color or a lighter red. Silver compounds, such as silver nitrate, make colors that go from orange red to yellow, depending how much is used. Titanium makes a yellowish brown. Cadmium makes a deep yellow, and uranium, and you guys probably heard about uranium glass, that gives it that fluorescent yellow or green color known as Vaseline glass. And it's interesting to note that while it doesn't contain enough radioactivity to make it dangerous, if it is ground or etched, or even if you break it and you're kind of sweeping it up, be careful, because the dust, if you get any of that powdered glass, it is carcinogenic. So it is dangerous glass when it's not in its complete piece. To make that beautiful amethyst glass or purple, that is manganese, and tin oxide is used for making opaque white glass. So I thought that was very interesting information. I know I didn't know it, so I wanted to share that. So the glass in stained glass, such as in these pieces, is held together with little strips of lead, and that creates the frame, and the workmanship that is involved in stained glass is just beyond belief, and that is why it is so expensive, so expensive. So let's talk about blown glass. There's two types of blown glass. There is free blowing, and there's mold blowing. So blown glass is made by a glassmith or a glass blower, and they use, let's see, get a better picture here. There he is. They use a blowpipe or a blow tube, and what they do is they take a glob of molten glass and they form it into a bubble that then they shape into the desired object. And you kind of see here how he starts here, he's blowing it into the object, and then they work with it. They twirl it and work with it and shape it. Sometimes they have to refire and work with it a little bit. It's quite an intense process. Mold blowing is the same thing as far as the blob of molten glass is concerned, but what they do is they blow it down into a mold. So the final shape and design and texture is determined by the interior of the mold rather than the skill of the glass worker. So that's an important difference. It's still going to have a pontil. Still going to have a pontil. Yeah, and there are some great glass blowing videos on YouTube. I highly recommend, if this is something that interests you, go check it out. It's really quite, you'll have a whole new respect and understanding for blown glass after you see how it's made. Then you have what's known as kiln-formed glass, or it's also known as hot glass. And this is made up of either a single piece of glass it's slumped over a mold, or it's a sheet of fused glass. And this is quite an interesting process as well. Now, this gets a lot into science, and that's like numbers, so we're not going to go a whole lot into that. Right, and it's also known as warm glass. Exactly. Yes, Charlene. So basically, the way that the glass fuses together and molds together has to do with the way that the glass cools and the firing temperatures, and it's quite a complicated process. It takes a lot of skill to do this, a lot of skill, and chemistry. Yes, 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 yes. So I'm staying away from the chemistry part, but the biggest point here is how much it takes to make these pieces of glass. And the more pieces that are put together, the higher the price, obviously, because more time had to be put into it. So it's formed flat, as you can see in this picture here. They're forming the glass here, the sheet, and then this happens to be a maker of, I believe this was sinks. So they form the glass, get the desired pieces together. As the temperature rises, they have it over this mold. As the temperature rises, it slumps into the mold beneath it. And as it gets in there and touches the edges of the mold, it cools and then stays that way. Slumping, yes. So quite fascinating, quite fascinating. I don't think I'd have the patience. I know I wouldn't have the patience. So sandblasting. Sandblasting is a surface technique. And what it does is it removes a layer of glass to make a design stand out. So these are usually thicker slabs of glass. A lot of Swedish art glass, Scandinavian art glass has this effect. It's deeper than etching. Okay, so you guys all think of like etching as kind of that, but etching is a very, very mild form. Sandblasting really gets in and carves out the image of the glass. And it's very high pressure. It gives it a three-dimensional effect. Find my mouse again. There we go. So this is a mirror that was done with sandblasting, and you can see the really heavy detail. Copper foil technique. So basically, this is a method that's pretty widely used by Louis Comfort Tiffany, or was, and it consists of wrapping the cut sections of glass in a self-adhesive tape that is made out of a thin copper foil. Then this is then sections get soldered together, and then they form things like this. So it's little pieces all put together, requires a huge amount of dexterity, and is very time consuming, hence the reason that these genuine Tiffany style lamps bring thousands of dollars. I mean, because it's just a very intense process to make these things. So let's talk about factory art glass. So what do you guys think of when I say factory art glass? So, okay, good. Assembly line, mass assembly line, cheaper, freelancers, okay, mass produced, not one of a kind. Okay, good. That is what is generally thought of, but keep this in mind. Art glass was made way back, usually in a factory, and they had crafters and designers that came in and worked all under one roof. One of the most famous factories for art glass is a little place called Fenton. So how many of you would say that Fenton is a low quality glass? Nope, exactly. So just because it's factory art glass does not mean it's cheap glass. Most antique art glass was made in factories, particularly in the UK, United States, and Bohemia. They were made to a standard or a pattern, but they were made by different people. And then they would get a stamp of approval when they were done and met the way that the manufacturer wanted them to look. All right, let's talk a little bit about flashed glass. So flashing, this is hard to explain, but I'm going to try. So you guys have heard some terms like flash, stained, all these things. So flashing is actually a very thin layer of glass of one color over a layer of contrasting color. Many times we see this in reds, That's a really popular color to do the flashing. It's done by dipping the glass of one color into a container that has molten glass of a different color, and then it's flashed on there. So the reason I'm telling you about flashed glass is for our next technique. And there's an example of some different colors of flashed glass. Cut to clear art glass. I love cut to clear. Cut to clear is usually Bohemian. That is where the technique was really heavily used, still is heavily used. There's even this glass still being made today. And cut to clear is a decorating technique where clear glass is flashed or coated with a layer of colored glass, and the top layer is then carved or cut away to create a recessed clear design. So it cuts through to the clear, and hence that's where the cut to clear comes in. There's pretty extravagant techniques used for it, designs made of it, but for the most part it all has a fairly common look, and you can tell it because it will have a texture to it. It isn't just a difference in colors. Okay, applied decorations. So you hear this term a lot, applied. One of the companies I absolutely love is Stevens & William. They do a lot of applied decorations. So this is an example. All of these pieces were applied to a base piece. Okay. Applied handles. And you can tell those, you can see where the handle is applied after the original form of the object is made. There's also things, applied feet. So it's really good to know that when you have a piece, knowing that it has an applied decoration can help you narrow down who the maker of that piece is. Okay, so how to identify it by designer or manufacturer? And this is where I decided, you guys, we need to have a couple more glass webinars that tie into this. So we're going to skim through some of these today, but there will be some future going deeper. So we're going to cover Lewis Comfort Tiffany, pretty important one. Dale Chihuly, you guys have heard that name. Dom Glass, Lodz, Glass, and of course Fenton. These are the biggies, guys. These are the ones that are going to bring you some really big money. All right, Lewis Comfort Tiffany. That's the one that everybody copies, everybody wants to be like. Tiffany, true Tiffany art glass is just exquisite. You will know you have a quality piece in your hand if you have a piece of Tiffany. There will be no mistaking in the craftsmanship. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Now, I haven't covered the lamps here because we all kind of know what a Tiffany lamp looks like, but I wanted to cover some of the other types of pieces of Tiffany that I would give my eye teeth to own. Lewis Comfort Tiffany lived from 1848 to 1933. This is American art glass. He actually became the first design director of Tiffany & Company, which was a little jewelry company that his father founded. You guys might have heard of it. So he wasn't the original Tiffany, but he did become the director and is who most of these things were known to have come from. So he had many, many designers that he collaborated with. These were known as the associated artists. And these are names that you may or may not run into, people like Lockwood DeForest, Candace Wheeler, Samuel Coleman. You may see those names out there, but it's okay if you don't and you don't remember those. So they made many different types of items, as I said, including stained glass windows and the such. So this particular type of glass I'm showing you here is known as Favre. This is created and patented by Louis Comfort Tiffany in 1894. This is what they are known for. So you see this iridescent, beautiful glass. This is where it originated. If you find a true piece of Tiffany, you are going to have at least a $1,000 bill in your hand. How do I spell that? It is F-A-V-R-I-L-E. So, of course, because this is really expensive glass, there are fakes out there. And the biggest way to try to fake a Louis Comfort Tiffany is with a signature. So this signature that I just pulled up for you guys is a fake. I wish I could pull that picture up. I should have put that more in the middle of the page. So a big, big hint on Tiffany signatures. 99% of Tiffany signatures, authentic Tiffany signatures, are going to be counterclockwise. Now, this one is counterclockwise, but what strikes you about this particular signature? Let's see if anybody can spot why this is a fake. Anybody? Oh, Tiffany's spelled right. So do you see the shakiness in this signature? They just were trying way too hard. Louis Comfort Tiffany would have signed this very quickly, etched it, had done hundreds of these, so it was kind of a really smooth process to put that signature into the pieces. So look for the quality of the writing. And if it's ever clockwise, it's a fake. Favril. They actually put the word Favril in there. This was somebody trying really, really hard to sell it to you as a Louis Comfort Tiffany. What do I mean by clockwise? Well, clockwise would be this way, right? So it would go LC Tiffany if it was the fake, whereas it's counterclockwise, goes this way. So if you see one that is clockwise, it is 100% fake. There's very, 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 very slight chance that it's real. So just note that. Dale Chihuly. Now I regret that when I was recently up in Seattle, I didn't get a chance to go to the Chihuly Museum, which is located up there, because he is from Tacoma. But this is glass that is just phenomenal. He is very distinct in his style. You can see from these pieces that you just know when you've got a Chihuly piece. His glass is in more than 200 museum collections worldwide. You're right, he does have some pieces in the Bellagio here in Las Vegas. Yeah, he's very well known for some. These are milder pieces. I wanted to kind of show you some pieces of potentially what you could run into for resale. He's got ceilings and chandeliers and like the most amazing pieces of glass. Just incredible. He's just an absolute master at his style of glass, and you guys will know a Chihuly piece when you see one, I guarantee it. Yeah, he is really known for the large sculpture type pieces. That is his claim to fame. Not too many small Chihuly pieces out there, but you are liable to run into little samples of things like this. So there's a lot of it on eBay. If you familiarize yourself with what's out there on eBay and the prices it's going for, you can keep an eye out for it. Yeah, a lot of you are saying you've seen his pieces in many places, and it's a name you still hear a lot because he is still living and he is still making glass. So, yeah, we have Dom glass. So Dom is made in Nancy, France, founded in 1878 by Jean Dom. He's got, of course, generations that kept the glass going. Really saw its heyday in the Art Nouveau period, so that is the glass that's worth a lot of money, is those pieces that go back to the Art Nouveau period. They still exist today, but it's not the same as it was back then. It's definitely a much different glass. Not a bad glass, but it's not what the collectors are really looking for. They are looking for these quality pieces, and it is cameo glass. So those who took the Murano art glass, you can go back and refresh yourself on that technique, because Dom glass is cameo glass. So these are some pieces that are the real thing here. This is the real thing. This is the real thing. So note the signature on this real piece, and most of these pieces are signed somewhere on the sides like this. What do you guys see about the reproduction down here in comparison? Right, it looks a little cheaper made. It's not as intricate. And the signature, completely different. Completely different. And it's very white. Yes, you are correct. Yes, if you just familiarize yourself with that authentic signature, you're going to know when you spot one of these. And there's a lot of these reproductions out there, sadly. Dom glass is going to be high quality glass, okay? There are some good repros out there, so you have to be careful not to get fooled. There are very specific shapes, colors, and subject matter specific to Dom. So if you were to familiarize yourself a little bit with those, if this is something you think you're going to run into, that can help you. Reproductions are never exact copies of those originals. The color is not as rich, and the quality will definitely be inferior. But it's getting better, so you have to be careful. And I'm trying to follow you guys. Yep, you guys are just saying pretty much the same thing. Yeah, there is a market for the reproduction. There is a market for the reproduction, but they're not going to bring anywhere near, and you have to be very careful how you list a reproduction and state it specifically as a reproduction. It was made in France. That's why the Nancy is not the person's name. Nancy is the city in France where this originated. So Lodz is one of my favorite glasses. It is from Austria. It predates Tiffany's Favril, although you can see that's very, very similar. The iridescent is really similar to what Tiffany came up with. Tiffany's got to be patented because he did some very special technique and again, that chemistry thing. So his has a very, very specific coloration to it. So Lodz, again, is a family company that carried on. Johann Lodz was the founder. Back in the 1840s, his grandson took it over and carried it well into the 1920s. The firm closed during World War II, so it is all pre-1940s there. So it is Bohemian art glass, and again, it was very, very popular in the Art Nouveau period. And mainly between 1890 to 1920 was the heyday. Okay. So Lodz does come in many different colors, as you can see by some of these examples. Again, it has the iridescent style. Quality is going to be there. There's going to be no doubt that you have a quality piece of glass in your hands when you have a piece of Lodz. Some of it is signed. As you can see the Lodz signature here. Most of it that I have come across is not. And I will tell you, I have been able to come across several pieces of Lodz glass, particularly in some of the opalescent. Some of you might remember the piece I showed on my Sunday night show that is owned by Janelle Elms that was discovered to be a museum quality Lodz piece. So I have held this in my hands, and I can tell you it is pretty spectacular glass, and you can find it. You can find it out there. Okay, now we have Emile Gaillet. Gaillet is really similar to Dom. In fact, they are both made in the same place, Nancy, France. 1846 to 1904 is when Gaillet was around. This is French glass. He is considered just to be one of the major forces in the French Art Nouveau movement. And it's, like I said, it's very similar to Dom. In fact, one of the only ways you will probably tell the difference is because it'll be signed Gaillet instead of Dom. Heavily reproduced, again, just like the Dom glass. So you can see it's cameo glass. It's got these florals and vegetation patterns, really deep, rich colors. Some of the things you want to look for, there's particular shapes. This is a fake. Can anybody tell me what strikes you right about this particular signature that would cause you to think it was a fake? Yeah, lots of reproductions coming out of China. Yep. Do you guys see something in particular about this piece that has fake written all over it? Exactly, that TIP, fake, fake, fake. Also, what else can you see looking at the close-up of this? What would strike you as maybe pinpointing this to be a fake? How about on the lead little pieces here, or what appears to be the little silver? How about the fact that there is like no consistency in the lines? Yeah. It's just not done in a quality way. Yep. So always look for quality, quality, quality. Okay, Fenton. Now you guys are going to run into Fenton Glass. Fenton Glass is out there everywhere you go. This you could probably even find more at yard sales and thrift shops. Lots of Fenton out there. Lots and lots of Fenton out there. Fenton was pretty mass produced. It was founded in 1905 by brothers Frank L. and John W. Fenton. And I mean, Fenton is like known as the art glass company. I mean, Fenton is the largest manufacturer of colored glass in the United States. And they have been around long enough to produce thousands and thousands and thousands of different pieces. Now the cool thing is that there are collectors of Fenton in general, but Fenton created, every single year they created new patterns and designs, and then there's collectors who had to collect everything in that pattern or everything in that color. And so you have lots and lots of Fenton collectors out there. So it's still very highly sought after and brings some good money. There's even catalogs you can refer to on the web. I mean, you can find pretty much anything you need to identify your Fenton pieces. Pre-1970, they did not have signatures. Keep forgetting to do that. So let me just go over here to the marks. Okay, so pre-1970, you didn't have this mark here. In 1970, they started putting the Fenton logo, fairly large, on the bottom of pieces. And now the way that you can date your Fenton pieces starting in 1970 is 70s, this logo. 80s, you'll see, have a number 8, and the logo is smaller. 90s have the number 9. 2000 has a 0, so on, so forth. So that's a really easy way to date the pieces that you have. Many, many, many of the hand-signed pieces you can identify the artists There are member pieces, there are QVC pieces, and this is one of those webinars, guys, that needs its own webinar. I mean, one of the manufacturers needs its own webinar. There is so much to learn about Fenton, so I am going to do a complete Fenton Glass webinar. So we're not going to go too heavily into that, but we're going to go into the colors, the shapes, the years, the marks, the labels, everything, okay? So I'll be putting that together for you. So how to price it. Of course, it's best to know the designer and or the style, know some of those keywords so that you can make some decisions on your pricing. Those that have been following me a while know how I do my pricing. Go find something similar. If you can't find the same thing, find similar and shoot for the stars. Without the designer name, you use the technique keywords. You can research, like I said, and find similar. So the rule of thumb is the more you can identify, the higher the price. And another rule of thumb, the more striking and intricate, the higher the price. So you may never know who done this spectacular piece of art glass, but because of its eye appeal and taking really good pictures, you can still command the high price because eye appeal always rules. Keep losing my mouse. So some things to avoid: pieces that are cheaply made. Know that quality. If you get a chance to go to an antique mall or someplace, even a gallery that you can put your hands on some of the glass, because not all of this is antique. There's many contemporary art glass pieces worth thousands of dollars. So get some place where you can get your hands on quality pieces of glass and learn the feel of it. Prices that are questionable as to authenticity. If it's not coming from some place that can authenticate it, if the estate sale or the auction doesn't have any provenance or history on the piece and you're going, I don't know, I think this is probably a fake, I say stay away from it, walk away. You don't want a reputation for selling fake pieces. You really want to try to get authentic pieces. Boring pieces. Plain, boring. I always say shop with keywords. If you can't come up with, like 6, 7, 8 really good keywords for a piece, you probably should leave it behind. And damaged pieces. Until you really learn which pieces warrant being sold, even if they're damaged, I would stay away from damaged pieces, damaged in the way of chips and cracks, and anything that could really just detract from the value. There are pieces that are very much worth selling, even with damage, and as you learn more, you'll learn what those are, and you can still go for it and make some good money. All right, how to photograph it. So the really cool thing about these types of art glass that we're talking about is that they have a color. So they're going to be much easier to photograph than the clear pieces. I highly recommend you have some sort of a little studio setup where you have some good lighting that you can, and I don't actually have one of the little tents as I show here. I put mine on a table with a white background, have the lights that shine onto it, and here's a key. Make sure that if you are using photography lighting, which you should, special bulbs made just for photography, that you are in a dark room and the only light in the room is coming from those bulbs. That is going to get you a much better picture than if you confuse your camera with some kind of other lighting, whether it be incandescent light bulb or fluorescent or even daylight. So try to do this in a room with no daylight and no other light and just your studio lighting. You're going to get the best picture. If you have a piece of, say, black plexiglass, makes for a really good effect on some of your glass pieces where it kind of gives a shadow effect, or even sometimes a mirror you can play around with, some artsy techniques. But most important is just have a really nice background, plain, not with a bunch of stuff around it, and get your lighting right. Your lighting is the key. Now you want to take pictures just as if you're picking up and looking at this on the shelf. So front, back, side, side. Even if it's a round piece, there's 4 pictures to get the whole going around the piece. Top, bottom, any close-ups of the signatures or the pontil or something that can help the person who is making the buying decision know if that's something that they want to buy. Your collectors can learn a lot, just even if you don't know a lot, just by your pictures and making sure that you show a lot. So contrasting background, yes. So a lighter piece, use black. Try it on both backgrounds, see what looks better, or include both in your pictures. Each piece will come out differently depending on the colors in the piece itself. How to package and ship it. This is the scary one. I just packaged and shipped a $600 piece of glass last week that, yeah, even I was a little squeamish because it was a piece that had several little panels all fused together and was quite intricate. So the way I did that, and I packaged it myself, is the first thing I did was I reinforced the places where I couldn't get bubble wrap into. And so how I did that was I got some air pillows to kind of stuff in between to give it some stability. Now on such things as a vase, that you can stuff some bubble wrap or something on the inside just to give it a little bit of stability. Then you can wrap around it, and I should be going step by step. Use a small bubble or a foam as your first cushion layer. Okay, bubble side in. I like foam because foam has no gaps. I use a 1/8 inch thick foam. You can get that from Bubble Fast, same as the bubble wrap. It comes in rolls. So that is my first layer. Now I don't just use that alone because it doesn't have the shock absorption that bubble wrap does. So then I use a large bubble as a second layer over that. I make sure that I cannot feel the piece at all through the cushioning. Okay? You almost want to feel like you could drop it on the floor and it's going to bounce. You don't want to test that, but you want to feel that way when you're packaging it up. Have 2 to 3 inches of peanuts in, this is your first box, and I'm talking, these are going to be expensive pieces, guys. I usually don't double box anything that's under, $100. I just package the first box really well. So if we're talking over $100 though, you really want to do this, especially as you start getting up there in the prices. You want to double box. 2 to 3 inches of peanuts all around the piece. So you've got 2 to 3 inches of peanuts as well as probably at least an inch thick in your foam padding. So you've got plenty of cushion there in that first box. Then you're going to put that first box into a second larger box that is again going to have from 1/2 inch to 1 inch of peanuts. Of course, the more the better, but it's going to depend, I know, on getting those boxes to fit. When you're putting those peanuts in the box, squish them down. Squish, squish, push, push those peanuts down, pack them in. Pack them in so that you have to really work to close that box. You don't want any movement. I do a shake test. If I can shake the box and still kind of feel something moving, it isn't packed enough with peanuts. You really want to pack those peanuts in there. And then you're going to put that first box into the second box. The reason you're doing that is because items that are heavy, and art glass is generally heavy, they can shift around and they can move to the edge of the box. So if it's only in one box, you don't want to take a chance of that being, the box that gets thrown in the bin with the 50-pound monster thing on top of it. So that second box really gives you that cushioning that you need. Market is fragile. I know, you hear this all over out there that there's no sense marking it. That just makes the post office want to kick it, yada, yada. Nope, I don't believe that. It is a process that these things go through. They do not purposely treat things fragile any differently. And here's the key, they don't treat it any differently. That's the problem. So when you're putting fragile on your box, it is not for the post office or UPS or FedEx. It is for your customer. It is for your customer to know that you took the time to handle it and tell them that it was fragile and to handle it with care. And use USPS priority, UPS, or FedEx. Never, 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 never parcel. Never, never parcel. The reason being parcel is those really heavy items that everybody ships, and figure your item gets brought up a conveyor belt and falls about 2 stories into a bin, and depending on what comes in after your item, you can have like a 70-pound package land on top of yours. That is how those packages arrive to you looking like they've been run over or played soccer with. It's all in how they're falling into the bin. Do I ever use crushed brown paper stuffing? I do not. Carolyn, I find that the paper doesn't have a good shock absorption value, and it also weighs more, so you're going to increase the weight. So I'm not a big fan of using the paper. I know a lot of people do successfully, though. All right, and I know I keep saying this, but I promise you it's coming soon. The video where I'm going to demonstrate my packaging technique. We watched for that. I have somebody actually to shoot that video now, so that'll be coming soon. All right, so now you are ready to find and sell some high-profit glass. Search places such as estate sales, auctions for your best chance of finding it, and also those are the places where you're going to get the best chance of having it identified for you. So listen to the auctioneer and ask questions, and ask the people at the estate sale what the history is on the items in the house. A lot of times you can get really good information that way. Use resources to identify techniques and designers. Of course, you have the Appster Facebook group. Get a hold of me. You have Google searches, image searches, all those great resources for finding and nailing down some of these things. Price for the collector willing to spend the money. Price, price, price. There are people who will spend money to have that awesome piece of art glass. Don't cheat yourself by pricing too low. Worst that can happen is, number one, it either doesn't sell or you have to lower the price. We can do that. A lot of times I will price something, say for $1,000, and end up with a $500 offer. Would I take that? You betcha, because I probably only spent $100 on a piece. So definitely do not be afraid to price your items high. Photograph on a white background. If that turns out well, if the white doesn't work for some reason, try the black. But edit, contrast, and make those pics pop. You know, cut out any extras around the picture. Make your item the focus of that photograph. Double box and mark fragile for those higher priced pieces. And now go make some money. And I'll leave just a couple minutes here for questions. And I know everybody here is an Appster, but this is going to be available to others. So we'll just put that up while I answer any questions that I may have missed. So I'm looking over here to see if any of you have any questions. So if you're going to photograph trying the plexiglass, put it just underneath the piece, just underneath, to set it on it. Yeah, so Barb asked if there's some Fenton lines that have better resale than others. And Barb, that's why we need to do a complete Fenton webinar, because yes, there are definitely some good. Of course, the more rare the piece, the higher the resale value. And there are some newer contemporary pieces of Fenton that are just as high priced as the older collectible versions of pieces. So we definitely need to go more in detail into that. Free blowing, yes, free blowing is harder technique than mold blowing, absolutely, because free blowing, they have to get that consistency and shaping just right. Whereas the mold, they're just blowing it down into the mold that's already got the shape and consistency. Yeah, you guys that are out in the Midwest, Ohio, West Virginia, those are big, big, big glass states. So definitely keep an eye out. Okay. Carnival glass is, it's not a, Carnival glass is made by many, many different companies, and we're going to go into that in a further webinar. Carnival glass got its name because it was little pieces of glass that were given out as prizes at carnivals and pretty much during the Depression era. Cameo glass is not etched glass. Yeah, and if you go back and review our Murano glass webinar, I go really deeply into more how cameo glass is made. It's layers of glass, and it's not etched. It is a technique where they go in and sculpt out the different colors and layers. All right, guys, thanks for hanging in there through some of the technical difficulties. Again, we can carry on these conversations over on the Facebook group. Would love to talk more about glass. I'm always up for talking about glass. I love glass. It's a fascinating product line that's out there, and it's, like I said, it's in the Untapped Treasure series because so many sellers don't want to touch it, and you can make a ton of money. And I want you guys to feel confident picking it up when you see it and not leaving it on the shelf. So thank you all for being here. And with that, now go be profitable and make it fun.